after Monday's edition of Raw Backstage was flooded with chaos amid Vince McMahon's last-minute rewrites, rescheduling, ripping up of the call sheets, etc. The big question is Vince McMahon backstage at Friday Night SmackDown tonight in Portland, Oregon? We've got details on what is expected, what is assumed, but who even knows at this point? One thing we do know is that Drew McIntyre has been pulled from tonight's edition of SmackDown and a scheduled meet and greet he was supposed to be participating in. We've got details on that. Plus, the draft. Are we going to be getting a WWE draft this year? Well, there were plans for one last year, but as of right now, we don't know that, but we've got the very latest details on what has been said about a possible draft. Logan Paul reportedly has re-signed with WWE. He signed a new contract. Dana White has spoken about the possibility of a WWE and UFC crossover. Ric Flair reportedly goes massively off script at the Hall of Fame, resulting in heat on the Hall of Famer. And does WWE want Christian Cage to return to the company to team with Edge once again? Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of WWE, and you do get the impression tonight is going to be filled with news because Vince McMahon is either going to be at SmackDown or he's not going to be. As of right now, we don't know if Vince McMahon is there in Portland, Oregon tonight or not, but we've got some really interesting details about what is expected tonight at SmackDown when it comes to the creative situation amid the chaos that was backstage Monday night on Raw. Now, an update has emerged on WWE Creative ahead of tonight's edition of SmackDown following recent WWE changes. Following the announcement that Endeavor had acquired a majority stake in WWE and will be merging WWE and UFC into one sports entertainment company, fans have been waiting to see what effects the acquisition will have on the television product. After Monday's edition of Raw, it was heavily speculated and reported that Vince McMahon had contributed to WWE Creative for the show, especially with the number of last-minute changes to the lineup. Per Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select, higher-ups they spoke to this week indicated that they both believed and hoped that this week's SmackDown would be a Triple H show. Fightful reported, quote, higher-ups that we spoke to on Thursday believed and hoped that SmackDown will return to the version of the show we saw since Triple H took over. Now, Triple H himself is set to address the WWE Universe on tonight's edition of the Blue Brand. Several other big matches and segments have been announced, including Sami Zayn versus Jey Uso in a singles match. Now, when it comes to if Vince McMahon is going to be there or not, though, that's still up in the air and uncertain. WWE higher-ups can hope that it's going to be a Triple H-led show, but that's what we also heard Monday night on Raw. Oh, it's going to be led by Triple H. Triple H is still going to be running the show from Gorilla, and that ended up not happening despite the fact that Triple H had told WWE talent that was what was going to be happening just hours before. So there is still some uncertainty about Vince McMahon's status for tonight's edition of SmackDown. Of course, this week's show will be the first episode of SmackDown following the announcement that Endeavor will merge WWE and UFC into one sports entertainment company. It has been heavily speculated that Vince McMahon will be taking more control of creative moving forward, following reports that he was firmly back in charge at Raw on Monday. Per Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select, there were, quote, very important people within WWE who were uncertain if Vince McMahon would be at Friday's taping as of last night. It was also noted, as I mentioned, that several higher-ups hoped and indicated that it is believed and hoped that the upcoming episode of SmackDown will return to the version of the show we have seen since Triple H took over. Now, at the time of recording this video, guys, just to give you an idea of how close we are to showtime, depending on where you're watching this video, and if you keep seeing my eyes dart to the left of me, it's because I keep refreshing to see if we get any more news about this. But at the time of recording this video, we're about 3 hours away from showtime, so logically one would think if Vince McMahon's in Portland, people would know about it by now. But that's not to say that he isn't there or he doesn't arrive at the very last minute, because we have heard before that the show's been written, the show's been ready, the show's been blocked out, and Vince McMahon shows up an hour before showtime, maybe even half an hour before showtime, rips up the script and goes, no, do it again, start over, try again. So just because as of right now just under 3 hours away from the show going live on the air, that there hasn't been any news about Vince being there, doesn't necessarily mean he isn't there, and we won't see the same thing that we saw Monday. So, of course, if we get any more details, we'll either talk about them tomorrow morning, or depending on the proximity at the time of when this news comes out, we might talk about it here tonight. But bear with, essentially, because this is going to be a fascinating story. Now, one person we know who's not going to be there tonight is Drew McIntyre, according to the latest reports. In one of the most positively received moments of Night 2 of WrestleMania 39, Gunther defended his Intercontinental Championship against Drew McIntyre and Sheamus. The 16-minute contest featured a plethora of hard hits and false finishes, but in the end, it was Gunther who emerged victorious after laying out McIntyre with a powerbomb. When the match concluded, spectators at SoFi Stadium and even the ringside commentators erupted with a standing ovation. Following their epic battle, many were eager to see what lay ahead for the trio of men, but in the case of McIntyre, we're going to have to wait and see to find out. According to PW Insider Elite, the Scottish Warrior has been pulled from tonight's edition of SmackDown in Portland, Oregon. The report noted that McIntyre was initially set to appear on tonight's taping, but as of now, he's been removed from the plans. In addition to SmackDown, McIntyre was actually slated to do a local autograph signing with one of WWE's business partners, Cricket Wireless, today as well. In the wake of McIntyre's absence there, Gunther stepped in as a substitute. Now, the reason behind WWE's decision to pull McIntyre from tonight's show remains unknown at this point. That said, it does occur in the wake of reports that McIntyre and WWE still aren't close to working out a new contract now that he's in the final year of his current deal. But just to sort of take a step back, it was also quite widely reported that his deal isn't up anytime in the immediate future, but he has less than a year left. In the meantime, McIntyre's opponents will be in six-man tag team action tonight. Sheamus will team up with his Brawling Brutes brethren, Butch and Ridge Holland, in a clash against Imperium. Gunther, Giovanni Vinci and Ludwig Kaiser. Also on the agenda is Chief Content Officer Paul Triple H Levesque, who is scheduled to address the WWE Universe after previously vowing that WWE isn't going anywhere after the company's merger with UFC earlier on in the week. So, look, McIntyre's also been battling a lot of illness and injuries recently, so it might just be a case of just a week off, a bit of time off, or maybe he's still sick, maybe he's still struggling. It might be something like that as well. So, again, it might be much ado about nothing, but people are putting two and two together and getting certain numbers, so you never know, particularly when it comes to possibly Vince McMahon being involved as well. Now, this is a really interesting one because there's been lots of speculation about the draft. When is the draft going to happen? It's after WrestleMania. Now would be the right time to do it, right? Well, this is quite interesting. So, according to Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select, the WWE Draft was set to happen late last year, but then it got moved. A draft that would have effectively reset the rosters for the new Triple H regime was rumored late last year. However, talent were told that it was being moved into an undetermined time in 2023. However, Fightful Select can confirm that unanimously across over a dozen talent on the WWE roster have not been told that a draft is coming or when it could even be. There were numerous WWE talents that said in discussing it with others, they just assume it would happen after WrestleMania, as it did many times in the past. As of Friday afternoon, that being today, talent still haven't been told about any potential draft. In the past, sources at both Fox and USA Network had told Fightful that they would primarily prefer distinctly different and separate rosters in order to specialize their investment. However, since the Triple H regime took shape, they've heard much less of that, but if Vince McMahon's back in the fold, do those requests and demands get higher? Again, we'll have to wait and see. A lot of people had assumed it would take place after WrestleMania, but because there's so much in flux right now, I guess it does make a ton of sense. And again, with maybe different creative plans, it might not make a lot of sense as well. But if we get any more details, confirmed details about a WWE draft, we'll let you know. Now, Logan Paul, there's been speculation about Logan Paul's future. Well, ahead of his match with Seth Rollins at WrestleMania, Logan Paul would reveal that his WWE contract was set to expire once the weekend was over. The news was perhaps a surprise, given that when Paul was initially announced as signing with WWE, it was announced that he had signed a multi-year contract with the company. While there has been uncertainty surrounding if and when Paul would be signing a new deal, Paul himself has been adamant about his desire to stay. Not only that, but Paul's WrestleMania opponent Rollins would also implore WWE to re-sign the YouTuber. Writing in the latest Wrestling Observer newsletter, Dave Meltzer would provide an update on Paul's situation, revealing that while nothing had been announced, Paul may have in fact already agreed a new contract with WWE. Meltzer said, quote, Logan Paul, when talking about his contract expiring after WrestleMania, did say that he expects to sign a new deal, and during the week the talk was that he did indeed sign a new deal. So if you're worried about Logan Paul going anywhere, don't, because he's not going to. I mean, he might not be on WWE TV for the next few months, but we can expect more Logan Paul matches in the future, certainly. Now, biggest story this week, of course, apart from Vince McMahon, and I guess is part of all of it, is Endeavor's purchase of WWE, the merger with UFC. And UFC President Dana White has now commented on the merger with WWE under Endeavor and what it means for the two companies. As confirmed on Monday, Endeavor has purchased WWE and will merge it into one sports and entertainment company with the UFC. There's been a lot of speculation about potential crossover between the pro wrestling promotion and the MMA company. Speaking with the Associated Press, Dana White noted that he's not expecting there to be much crossover due to the differences between wrestling and MMA. White said, quote, you have the power of the fan base of WWE, you have the power of the fan base of UFC, and you have the power of the viral. I don't even know how this thing is yet, the viral ability and whatever that fan base is going to be for Power Slap. Oof. We can reach all these people in so many different ways. There is a lot more resources now. WWE has a lot more resources. It's a phone call away now. All they have to do is pick up the phone now and say, hey, how did this happen? I need this. I need a contact. How did you do this? You all work together to make sure everybody wins. We've been together on the same weekend many times. Come out of a UFC event, you have Monday Night Raw. Who knows? These are all things that can be figured out on the business side. The difference between UFC and WWE is, if you look at the WWE, they have an entertainment value. They have these guys that are incredible athletes that go in there and do their thing. It's well known that it's scripted. When you look at UFC, this is as real as it gets. That's our tagline. You have these guys that are incredible athletes that have to be well-rounded and well-versed in all these different aspects of martial arts. Then you have the entertainment side of it too, but it's real fighting. It's real. There are no predetermined outcomes in the UFC. There really won't be any type of crossover. So Dana White's saying there's not going to be much crossover, but as he mentions, maybe in terms of the business side of things, you could see a situation where the UFC runs an event on a Saturday and then that leads into a WWE event, possibly on a Sunday. They make a big weekend of it. That is possible, I guess, and I think that's maybe what he's hinting at in terms of how they could really, really work together in the future, but that all remains to be figured out and remains to be seen. Now, one of the biggest sort of takeaways as well when it came to this Endeavor purchase of WWE was, how is this going to affect WWE's relationship with Saudi Arabia? Of course, WWE signed a multi-year deal with Saudi Arabia in 2018, expanding its partnership in 2019 to bring them 2 large-scale events a year. With WWE being purchased by Endeavor, merging them with UFC, details of the future for the Saudi Arabia deal have been touched upon. Writing in the current Wrestling Observer newsletter, Dave Meltzer reports, quote, as far as the relationship with Saudi Arabia goes, given that Emmanuel and Endeavor pulled out of their business relationships with Saudi Arabia years ago after the murder of reporter Jamal Khashoggi, the belief from WWE is that current deal will continue through the terms of the current contract, which is for 20 events in total. Obviously, Saudi Arabia would have been interested in a similar UFC deal, and Emmanuel never made such a deal. As time goes by and more entities are back doing business, Emmanuel could soften his stance, and this WWE deal could open the door for talks that would lead to a similar UFC deal, although UFC already works with Abu Dhabi. When this contract expires, it would be up to Emmanuel to decide whether or not to continue it, and that isn't a decision that would be made until around 2028, and many things can change in the interim. So basically, there was some concern that maybe because of this Endeavor purchase that everything would fall apart when it came to Saudi's relationship with WWE, and that's a long way away, so it's probably not even something to approach right now. Now, there had been reports that Ric Flair had heat, what's new, but obviously this was coming out of the Hall of Fame this past weekend, and now we maybe know why. Ric Flair inducted the legendary Japanese wrestler The Great Muta into the WWE Hall of Fame in a speech that has made WWE higher-ups unhappy. Highlights from Flair speaking about Muta and Muta addressing his induction can be seen during the broadcast, but according to the Wrestling Observer newsletter, the level by which Flair strayed from the approved script have now been revealed. Addressing the subject, Dave Meltzer writes, quote, for the Hall of Fame, there was a teleprompter teleprompter where the planned speeches were written, and pretty much everyone except Ric Flair read them, so what was said was planned out and approved. The thing is that Flair didn't read the teleprompter at all, and he just gave a speech having nothing to do with the script until the very end when he got back on script. The stuff listing Riki Choshu and Tenryu and Fujinami was actually the stuff that was in the script. So basically, Flair just rambled on incoherently and then right at the end got back on script, and people weren't happy about that. Go figure. Finally, WWE could possibly be looking at wanting to bring Christian Cage back to the company. Obviously, this is has been spoken about this maybe being Edge's final year in professional wrestling, and there's been speculation that he could retire in Toronto at some point this summer. Since making his return at the Royal Rumble in 2020, the Rated R superstar has been making up for lost time after he was forced to step away from the ring in 2011 due to his neck injuries. In recent months, Edge has teased stepping away from the ring for good now that he's able to finish his career on his own terms. In the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Dave Meltzer commented on Edge, saying he's looking to retire at a show in Toronto, Canada, potentially within the next year. Noting there has been some behind-the-scenes chatter about the possibility of an Edge and Christian reunion, Meltzer writes, quote, Edge this week talks retirement in a lot of places. Basically, he noted that he's turning 50, his birthday is on October 30, and has said last year publicly he was looking to retire this year when his contract expires. He said he wants his last match in Toronto. There is no pay-per-view show scheduled right now for Toronto, but he said he would retire just doing a show in Toronto more than he'd want to retire at next year's WrestleMania, because to him, he started in Toronto and that's where he wants to end it. Behind the scenes, there was talk of Edge and Christian wanting to team together one last time or a run, but we don't know Christian's contract length and if it would be possible. Edge signed a 3-year deal for $3 million per year in 2020, and likely time was extended due to injuries, but would be up later this year. Tony Khan had approached him while he was retired to come to AEW, but WWE made the bigger offer and he went back to WWE at the time. So you never know, basically. You never know. We could see an Edge and Christian reunion at some point. Whether that takes place in WWE or AEW, I suppose that's the question, but that's kind of the latest right now. So there you go, guys. That's the latest WWE news for you. As I mentioned, when it comes to the Vince McMahon stuff, if we do get any update about Vince McMahon, if he's there or not, we'll let you know. Most likely it'll come after tomorrow's morning video, and hopefully we'll have a lot more details on really what happened behind the scenes at SmackDown. Here's hoping it's a bit less chaotic, but you never know. So be sure to smash the like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.